You are now live. Hey, y'all. Good afternoon. Welcome, Brown Mamas community. Welcome if you're new to the Brown Mamas community, or should I say, in the words of my delightful guests, welcome, Black mothers and others. Yes, girl, I'll be following you. So I'm so excited to have this conversation with this woman. Um, we're having this series of conversations called the State of Black Motherhood Uninterrupted. We're going to be doing them. I'm going to be doing them throughout the month of May, every Wednesday at 12 o'clock p.m. or a little bit later, because I'm always on CPT. Just know that I'm always on CPT. I'm never not on CPT. Color People's Time, if that's new for you. And so I really thought about who I wanted to have these conversations with because it is the State of Black Motherhood Uninterrupted. And so I really thought about women who were living the lives really that their ancestors wanted them to live. And we're doing it unabashedly. We're doing it decolonized as best as they could be in this current colonized state. We're doing it with joy as best as they could in this colonized state, and who were doing it out loud, meaning I've seen them, I've experienced them living Black motherhood uninterrupted. And so I could not think of anybody better to start this conversation with than, I'm speaking it into the years, Dr. Potentially, possibly, eventually, Ambreia Meadows-Fernandez of Free Black Motherhood. She embodies for me what it means to live as a free Black mother. Did not know that this sister was so much younger than me because we've kind of been living a parallel universe in many ways. Because, I homeschooled my kids. I unschooled my kids. I unschooled myself and talked about it out loud in the social sphere. But would love to introduce y'all to this lady. Thank you so much for joining us today, sis.
Thank you so much for having me, Muffy. So I'm laughing because, like I said, one day my dream is for that PhD, that doctor to be real in front of my name. And also, have you ever seen a Black Lady sketch show? There's a
Yes, of course.
Remember Dr. Hadassah
Yes.
That's what it made me think of when you said that. It's like, just letting you know, this is a space right here. It's not occupied by nothing right now. And I'm just putting the space aside.
Yes.
So I definitely thought about that. And my heart is just warm. And I am just overjoyed to be able to have this conversation with you because I have been watching what you've been doing for years. I think I first reached out to you like directly on LinkedIn, but I have been watching you on IG. And, I just love to be in community with great Black women.
Me too, sis. Me too. And so I want to ground us because we are having a conversation about being uninterrupted, recognizing that even this conversation is a bit of an interruption. Even though we are two sisters talking to each other, we are obviously putting ourselves out there for others to experience. And sometimes that in and of itself can be an interruption in life. I was just telling, girl, you're going to correct me on your name. And everybody, if you've been watching me for a while, I got white lady mouth sometimes. It don't always do what it's supposed to do. Dr. Ambreia. So Dr. Ambreia,
Stop calling me doctor before these people think I'm a doctor for real.
She's not doctor, she's my doctor. Okay. Ambreia, I want to ask you about just how you're feeling right now. I know the state of the world is very interesting. We are in the shadow of a full moon in Scorpio, which is pulling us all inside and making us feel the feels. But how are you feeling right now as life is being interrupted?
How am I feeling right now as life has been and continues to be interrupted? I would say that I'm just living the realness of the tension, and so what I mean when I say that is knowing that I am doing, particularly at this stage in my life, I'm doing some very intentional recalibration, rebirths, personal shifts in the way that I move, the way that I think, the way that I show up in relationships, which brings joy, to have that grounded sense of self, but to also try to make those shifts in a time where the world is on fire,
Mm-hmm.
in pretty much every way possible. And I think it feels like living those tensions and feeling the joy and the guilt at the same time,
Mm-hmm.
because I know there are so many folks that don't have that space and capacity to make those shifts right now, even though it's kind of like a matter of life and death, right? Like all you have is
Right.
the self. And as I've been talking about, the theme this week for me is the systemic removal and breakdown of our relationship to ourselves, you know? And so knowing that there are so many folks who don't have that necessary space, which leaves us in autopilot, but also leaning on, like I have one of my friends, Stephanie Ghostin Paul, one of the things that she says a lot is me not, or us generally not living in the freedoms that we have doesn't give someone else more freedom. Um,
Mm.
and so
Mm.
instead of
Like
sitting
that.
here, I know, instead of sitting here in that frustration and shame, you know, I think of my sister friend. She has an organization called Living Ancestor. And again, like, yes, I can acknowledge the fact that people are hurting around me emotionally, but me suffering emotionally alongside them does not actually support any of us.
Right.
Um, so that's a long way to say right now I'm feeling a lot of feelings, because that's how I
Mhm.
move through life, always thinking, always feeling, and somehow still here.
Right. And I love that you said that because I think it encourages us back into that theme of learning how to be uninterrupted in the face of colonization
Yep.
and in the face of destruction and in the face of so much terror, to be honest. And it reminds us that there are big and small ways you can support. You can support by not being a part of the problem. I just posted on Facebook this morning because I woke up. Well, I didn't wake up and get right on Facebook. I actually took a pause and I did my yoga. And then when I picked up my phone, I had a message that I wanted to share. And it was just a list of complaints. And I just said, what about if we started seeing ourselves as the solutions? Like every thought, every interaction, problematic or not, is a solution to something. It's a solution to internal interrogation. It's a solution to getting along with somebody and seeing how you can and cannot relate to that person. So I've just really been into this space of like, how can I be a part of the solution? How can I add to the ecosystem? And sometimes that's lighting a candle with the ancestors. And sometimes that's showing up in spaces with extra food. And sometimes that's lending a helping hand to a friend or a family member. It's not always, I think we've decided to define participation in our society in very specific ways, and we've forgotten about the small ways that we can support each other without needing to always be the rah-rah in the room. So I honor what you said. I took some time to do, first of all, I went on your website and I clicked a drop down and it said non-desired home. And I chuckled. And I also was like, this is so her. Like,
My website is one of my biggest ops right now. So let's
I know, but it's so you. And that's why I'm like, I'm looking at the website and I'm like getting into the mind of like a content creator. And I'm like, I know this website is annoying her, but she doesn't realize how it shows you in the most like delicious way. It does. It's like
that
you
damn
can feel
website,
your
I swear.
personality. You can feel your personality coming through the website. But there was something that I read there. Let me get in my notes. And it said that you live by a Latin phrase, which I'm familiar with because of our great mother ancestor, Maya Angelou.
Yep.
And I'm going to try to say it, but I want you to tell us what you mean by this, because I know it can be interpreted in so many ways. But the Latin phrase is homo sum humani nihil e mi alienum puto. What does that mean, girl? And how does this bring you joy and freedom in your life?
I recently got it tattooed last
Ooh,
year.
let me see. Can you bring it up close?
Yes,
I love it.
it's my favorite. And so this is actually my first and only tattoo. I got it almost a year ago. And so telling you about me getting that tool will answer your question in my usual roundabout way. So I ended up getting this tattoo for a couple reasons. One is because I was always tattoo neutral. I didn't think tattoos were a great thing or a bad thing. I think they were just
Mhm,
something, you either did or you didn't. But I always knew that if I had a tattoo, it needed to be something that was essential to me and that would maintain its value long term.
mhm.
Um, and so my husband, he was going to get his second tattoo, and I was like, "Oh, you made an appointment to get a tattoo and you didn't even tell me or ask me." So he was like, "Well, I'll call them back and add you to the appointment." And I was like, "No, I haven't had enough time to think about a tattoo." And he was like, and this moment is very us. He was like, "No, you have to get a tattoo now because otherwise you would have been complaining for nothing." And
Right.
so
Oh, he turned it back. He double advocate.
he did.
I'm
So
screaming.
and then I was just like, did nobody ask you? But yeah, so we went up there. And the thing that I had even like tested out having a friend like write it with bold print markers on my arm. And so what it translates to is I am human. Nothing human is alien to me. And as you said, I originally heard it from the late great Maya Angelou. It is a quote from Terrence, who is one of the earliest Black poets on record. And for me, it's pretty much this reminder that at any given moment, I can do all of the most amazing things humans have done because I share that identity as a human. But it's
Mhm,
also that grounding that the worst shit that we've seen people do, I'm also a human. And
mhm.
it's kind of like this checkpoint. The reason I got it on this arm instead of this arm is because if I'm like kind of throwing a fit in my moods, mad at somebody, like I intended to be able to like write with this arm and be like, shit, let me get my shit together. I'm
Right.
human. There's nothing this person is doing that I am not equally capable of doing.
Mhm.
And it really makes me think really about everything, about the ambitions I set for my life, about the frustration and the anger and the resentment I hold over all people, and just gives this checkpoint of like, wait a second, you mad, but have you done anything on that spectrum? If so, let's issue some compassion there and move different.
That's what I love about it. I think when I read it, I've read that before, but because I was going to interview you, I had to I like really wanted to understand it. And I think it is a call for us to like recognize the full spectrum of our humanity.
Yes.
And I like what you said. Like when you're interacting, it reminds you that you are capable of that very thing
Hmm.
as well.
Yep, it is definitely that. And to your point about that spectrum of humanity, I mean it's like the spectrum of the self, the spectrum of humanity, and I also see it as again a unifier because in
Mhm.
this moment right now, we're so caught up in who believes what, who does what, and again for good reason. There's harm executed through these things, so I'm not saying that the things we associate ourselves with do not further or reduce harm, because that's true. But the core identity all of us have in common is we're the same species. We are
Right.
human. And again, we allow these structures, these social systems and structures that were constructed by humans to become absolutes and play out in the universe like we're predestined to a particular thing. And it's like, y'all, we don't have to do it this way. Like, we don't have to have, look, to bring it to our conversation, we don't have to have a world where Black mamas and others don't have access to paid maternal leave, making sure, having to choose between our child rearing and caring for our children, trying to build families with systemic family ripping apart and deconstruction, like where we don't have space to decide who we are before we give birth, where we're afraid of dying as we give birth. Like, this stuff doesn't have to happen.
Right.
All of these luxuries that certain humans have, we could all have them. And I like, to me, it's not complicated, it's simple, but we chose to play in the complications of it, and here we are trying to deal with the aftermath, I guess.
Right. And that unifier is always a reminder to me of, like, I think it is so hard for us to understand the pendulum swing of life, right? And that every human is going to experience that pendulum. At whatever experience you are having right now, you are at some point in your life going to have the exact opposite experience. Your reaction may not be the same as your friend's reaction when you have that experience, but you are tied to that exact opposite experience, as evidenced by the very moment that you're living right now. So when we really think about, when we're judging someone for what they're doing, recognize that the same is going to happen for them. They're going to have that. It's going to, like, it has to happen. That is a part of being human, is that what goes up must come down, which goes left is eventually going right, because we live in a circular universe, not a linear universe. And I think it is hard for us to really, I think as Americans, we've been given such a linear pathway of understanding that we don't get it. That you're going to empathize with your quote unquote enemy at some point in your life, whether it's on your deathbed, whereas to me, that would be the worst place I'd want to have that, because I'd want an opportunity to see the fullness of humanity by having that exact experience, even if it's painful, even if it hurts. So when I seen that on your website, I was like, yo, she's my people. Like, this is my kindred sister, because it brought me to such a place of home within myself for the struggles that I'm experiencing right now, as well as the struggles that the people around me. It's like, this is our home, right? For all of us. So when I meet somebody and they're having an experience, I'm like, why the hell are you doing that? That's dumb as hell, or you're evil. It reminds me that we are one. Other side of the coin. How can I be more compassionate in the moment?
We are. And it reminds me of, or takes me to something that I'm really heavy into, because I tell anybody who will listen and nobody who asked, that I'm on a self-love journey that I'm calling like a year-long love container journey, right? And so something I'm really into right now is the idea of having a home within the self. And like my relationship, we've been together. I always tell people we've been married since we were children. We got married at maybe 21 or 22, and it's been hard. It is hard to get married when you didn't know who you were, and then life plays out, and then you have kids. And there was, for so much of that experience, I felt like a sense of shame and alienation, because nobody talks about that. Like,
they don't.
Either you hear of a divorce, or you hear of or you see a perfect picture, but you don't hear anything about the journey. It's hidden, you know? And one of the things that I realized, because I've been really deep in my feelings like the last 3-4 months, is that there's a particular way I wanted my partner to show up for me, but I didn't have any place to put that love. And so what I've kind of been working on is like, okay, you say you want this from somebody, but where are you going to put it? And how do you cultivate and grow the thing that you're going to be able to hold and reserve that love in? And so it just looks like a lot of deep work, but I was going somewhere with that. I'm trying to remember where. My train of thought just flew out the window like the cuckoo's nest.
It's all good, because I think you said something that makes sure we're going to have a part 2 of this interview. Because married young too. And we married when we were 26. We're now 43. We've been married most of our adult life. And none of it was uninterrupted. It was all interrupted because we had children the entire time. And nobody tells you what it is like to grow attached to another person.
Nope.
Like you can't go, you get to points in your growth journey where you're either pulled back or you're pulled forward, and now they basically slingshot up against you and you fall forward.
Yep.
And it's just this girl. That's part
Tug of
two.
war.
That's part two. Like, we're gonna have to have a marriage
Okay.
episode that specifically focuses on that right
Okay,
there.
we can do it.
There's so much to talk about. But I wanted to bring us into the concept of mothering.
Mhm.
So there is this whole work that we've been doing like the last 2 decades. I feel like there was a point at which it started, which was like the 2000 teens, where there was like just a bunch of Black moms that came on the scene and was like, yo, we want to talk about being a Black mom in particular, not just a mom, but being a Black mom, what the struggles are. And it kind of reached like this head, like right after the pandemic. And now we're in this phase of like, okay, Black mamaing is its own form of resistance. But we've known this because of the concept of mother work by Patricia Collins.
Yep.
And so I'm going to read her definition, and I just want you to respond to it. And she says,
I got my copy too. I'm listening.
I already know you got it. That's why I said I could ask you, sis, about this.
Let's go ahead. Let's go.
It's going to hit. It's going to be informed. It's going to be. But mother work is a survival strategy and form of community activism for Black women, merging personal care with political resistance against oppression. So I just want you to respond to that. You know her body. You know what she's about. Mother work. Because that is what we've always been engaged in it. But now we are finding ways to communicate it extremely clearly, get paid for it, because we are doing work. And we're also finding ways to, might I even further say, add definition to what she is given.
Yes. So when I think about Patricia Hill Collins talking to us about mother work, where I go is not only in what you just shared with us, is understanding it not only as the work of caring for our children, but the work of working about caring for our children. And, like at the meta level, I also think about how Patricia Hill Collins' Black woman standpoint on mothering is actually foundational and essential to the Free Black Motherhood story. And really the way that happened for me is she gave me a sense of hope in a field of hopelessness. So my master's is in American Studies, and I focused on reproduction generally, but Black reproduction specifically, because if I'm gonna do it, it's gonna be Black. That's just how I gotta live.
Right.
I was about to say something. I don't know if I can say that word here, so never mind. But
you can say whatever you want here.
Okay. Look, I gotta sprinkle some nigga on it, no matter what it is.
All right.
We gotta do it.
I just say sprinkle some melanin on it. But yeah.
Mine is a little bit more unscripted, but but yes, I tell people that because I spent so much time with my granddaddy. He said that like a first name, so it's again very big in my lexicon. But anywho, yes. So at the time that I encountered not only Patricia Hill Collins talking about mother work, but more specifically a Black woman's standpoint on mothering, was when I was in my master's program and I was learning about the institution of motherhood, which is a concept that was defined or coined by, I say this all the time, and now I'm going blank on her name. I have the book over here somewhere. I'll bring it by. But anywho, so this particular scholar introduces us not only to the institution of motherhood, which is this larger set of structures that basically describe how motherhood does not exist on its own. In America, just like everything else, there was a purpose for it. And when I say purpose, not a purpose in the sense of us moving through the everyday, but a purpose in the sense of the powers that be, the systems of colonization, dominion, control, had this idea that men worked outside of the house, and that was the public sphere, and the private sphere was where women belonged with the children, right? And so the purpose of the mother, and in this context, of course, we're talking about a very general white, non-enslaved perspectives. No, that's what things are founded on. The purpose of the mother is to bring the same order in the home that the man is supposed to bring in the external world. And that sounds cute and cool when you're white, okay? Really, it's not good for anybody, but we'll get to that in a minute. It sounds cute and cool when you're white, but one of those early evidences that life was just different for us, and like you said, Black mothers needed our own perspective, is the institution that tells you to shepherd your children in concordance with the laws around you, told us that we were raising our children for bondage. So by definition and original structure, we would have to, and we see ourselves grappling with this today, we would have to prepare our children for a system that sees them as less than human in order to be parenting in accordance with the institution of motherhood, right? And so, of course, that is an issue for a few reasons. One, that's not what we dream of for our kids. So that's one of those earliest tensions that we have. And two, at the time that these ideas around what mothers' roles were in society, we weren't actually viewed as mothers. We were viewed as people who gave birth to social capital to produce wealth for this nation, right? And so, of course, the irony or the gag is there was not a disconnect to them for how it applied to us because it was never meant to apply to us. And it was never meant to apply to us. And so, as a side note, you and I can get into another time, like some of my other favorite things to just kind of read about from that time. All my books are right over here. So like in Killing the Black Body by Dorothy Roberts, she introduces us to this really interesting concept that was unique to Black motherhood called maternal fetal conflict. And so basically it's those moments that we have heard around how as enslaved people, like we were being mistreated, raped, beaten, and they would like dig an area for us to place our bellies to not harm the developing child, And so politically, a lot of the reproductive justice scholars of this time say that even those practices were proof that the systems in power will take the needs of Black kids and juxtapose and weaponize them against us as mothers.
And we see that every day.
Every day. Look, ain't nothing new but the name on the mail. Ain't nothing new but the name on the mail. Because again, even under that very painful and clearly inhumane and sick structure, they pretended like they cared about what was developing as they were literally beating and harming us. And so in a lot of ways, we see that now where we're forced as Black mothers to choose between, okay, do we go along with the institution for what I like to say for legibility? So people can understand us, so people can see us as valid, so people can stop showcasing us as the unfit mother, all these different stereotypes that are broken down in Black feminist thought. But also, or do we choose to parent in a way that affirms them and ourselves and validates our traditions? And so alongside the institution of mothering, Adrienne Rich, that's her name. I don't know why, as much as I have to say that, I don't know why I lost it. But anyway, just as Adrienne Rich introduces us to the institution of motherhood, she also talks about the practice of mothering. And so the practice of mothering is in some ways that mother work, right? Those everyday moments. What happens in between the world telling me who I'm supposed to be as a parent? How do I interact with my child? What's our routine of hair combing? What is our bedtime cuddles? Like all of those things. How do I tell them to get ready for school in the morning? Those things are more of the daily practice. And I tell people all of the time that using those definitions as guides, but not as absolutes, because
Right.
we have our
Right.
own. Many of us, we hate motherhood because we're feeling the weight of the systemic pressures of who we're supposed to be, but don't have space to experience the practice of mothering.
Right. That's hitting it.
Yes. And so from there, so I remember reading that, and at the time, my kids, I don't remember how old they are. My youngest might have been like 1. So
Mhm.
I was in my master's program with a very young baby. It was the pandemic. It was hard out here. It was hard. Um, but yes, and so I remember like feeling that frustration and knowing that my thesis was going to be around liberated mothering and Black mothering specific. I decided to study the experiences of Black mothers in Wyoming and surrounding areas. So
Mhm.
Wyoming, Colorado, Nebraska. And just hear like, how the hell are we doing
Wow.
this in isolation? Because
Right.
nobody thinks of us,
Right.
are
Right.
ostracized. We are not considered. We are not a part of this national dialogue. We can't
Right.
use the strategies other people do. And what I found was exactly what Patricia tells us, that Black women have long had a flexible, adaptive, personally grounded way that we connect with our kids.
Right.
And that looks like breaking down white scripts and ideas of what family systems look like. That looks like knowing how to present in different spaces what we now know as code switching, but it's also, even though there's limits to it, it's also a tool of survival, right? Like,
Mhm.
know how to do what it takes to survive. And also, we find some kind of way to show up for our children in that process. And of course, she says, like, no, every mother isn't excellent at it, right? You know,
Right.
of course, every mother doesn't love it, but she speaks to how, for many of us, when we are present and embodied in this experience of mothering, it opens up a new world that we didn't know we could have had access to. And all of a sudden we feel powerful, and all of a
Mhm.
sudden we want to change the world. And all of a sudden we're like, not for my baby, and we get this sense of autonomy, this sense of agency, this sense of purpose, because there is something to fight for and to walk towards. And that is a long, unsolicited answer to how I feel about mother work.
But what I love is it's just like, number one, I'm so grateful to have been able to embody that recognition that my mothering had to be separated from the
Mhm.
expectation, had to be unschooled from the expectation. And the power that that gives you once you realize that you are not playing on an even playing field, and that you need to develop your own principles, your own ideology, your own outcomes for what mothering will produce. It just gives you, this is why I love free Black motherhood. This is why I love brown mamas. This is why I love my brown baby, was one of the people that spearheaded the movement.
I
This is
remember.
why I love motherhood redefined, and all the women online in particular who are developing these mommy modalities and showing Black women that there is such a breadth of a way to do the mothering thing that does not need to look consistent at all with
Mhm.
what you are seeing out of the Target commercial, or the expectations that the daycare worker has from you. And the fact that you are doing this in Wyoming gives me hope that we all can do this, because girl, you are girl, I don't even know when I first found you online, I was like, how is she doing it? Like, you reached in the depths of your womb and pulled out something and said, behold, I will study with you, I will walk with you, hold my hand as I go through this. And I think you give me hope that there really can be motherhood decolonized, motherhood unschooled, motherhood radicalized among Black women wherever.
And folks, I run into that a lot when I talk to people. They're like, "So where are you located?" And they expect like a city.
Right.
And like, to give you a context of how much of I really live in more of a town than a city. There's less than 70,000 people, and I live in the capital. There are less than 1 million people in the entire. Yes, there are less than 1 million people in the entire state of Wyoming, least populated state in the U.S. And there are moments that I hold that I always hold that tension very close, because on one hand, I wished that what doing this work in this place looked like was regularly gathering a whole bunch of Black mothers and being in person and having chats and all these other kind of things. And what it's really looks like is building connection and relationship with the Black mamas I can find here, most of us of which are military affiliated, and also refusing to be written out of the story.
Right.
And so, like, one of the reasons I was so proud of my master's thesis was not just because I did it, not just because I did it with kids, not just because I was the only, look, I think later on when I was about to graduate, another Black woman, I think she might have been from the UK by way of Nigeria, came to the program. But the only Black American graduate of the American Studies program that I had seen, but also I stated my place. And I let people know, like, I'm not going to limit the freedom that I extend to myself and my children by geographical constraints.
That's right.
We can't do that. And in some ways, it was like, I'm originally from Dallas. I lived there until I was 21. So I would say in some ways, it was a boldness of that. But in other ways, I just needed a version of mothering that I felt like I could survive.
Right. That you can do. That is actually possible.
One that I can do. And so, like, the short version of a longer story is like Free Black Motherhood as a title. It's a reference to multiple things. Like, on one hand, it's a descriptor. I am free. I am Black. I am a mother. Right. In the other, it is a directive. Be free. Embrace Blackness. You are also a mother. And then, but at its core, it's a reference to partis sequitur ventrum, which was an English legal principle founded during the early days, the foundation of the United States, those early colonial days, right? And it translates to that which is born follows the womb. And what it meant for me, again, something else I came across when I was experiencing the materials that I was talking about over here, is I was also in the throes of gentle parenting in that moment. And it hurt me. It was asking, and the way that I eventually was able to describe it is it was suggesting that I needed to give my children a peace that I didn't have access to. And so coming across those
bruises.
So coming across those that early legislation and reading that in plain sight, that the way that they weaponized maternal lineage in this country is the status of the child follows the mother. And so I sat here, I remember I was in like writing something, and I was like, I am trying to bring my kids closer to freedom. That's not new. Our people have been doing this globally since we have existed. But what is new is us deciding that we will accompany, and if we're bold enough, even precede our children in freedom. Because if that which is born follows the womb, if my womb is back here, my kids are too. There is no, and the other thing I tell people is thinking about the stories we hear of enslavement. If you had a person that was fortunate enough to claim their freedom for themselves, if all their family was back at the plantation, you're going to keep running because that's your home.
Right. That's your home.
You can only go back to what you consider home. And so what I realized is I did not want a version of freedom for my children that left me behind.
Right.
And
Right.
also, they needed my example so they would have somebody with them. So when the moments got hard, they would not default to what it is. And so for me, that became, of course, I do have a very big beef with the whitewashed version of gentle parenting, like the whitewashed version of anything. The whitewashed version of nothing is good. So there's that. The whitewashed version ain't no good in it. But but you know, we also see these examples of Black mothers that are leading this conversation on more like conscious parenting, and I align myself with that. And also, what I wanted different is I knew there were people who were advocating for my children's freedom, but I needed someone to advocate for mine. And that's what I started doing. And so it's like, okay, yes, to my liberated kids. And also, I'm going first. I am not letting them beat me to freedom, you know? And so it just kind of went from there. Knowing that positioning, that experience that my children had would be rooted in the experience that I was modeling for them.
And that is the only way to do it. Like, there is not another way. I don't know why we have this thing where it's like, I want to give my kids better than what I had. I want my kids to go play. Your kids are going where you went. And maybe they might exceed you, but you have to know that if they exceed you, they are also going to have some reckoning experiences that allow them to recognize, I'm the first person here. So we can't expect our children to exceed us without pain, without trauma, because nobody's been there before. And they don't have a shepherd. They don't have a shepherd. They're gonna take some lashes. Like, I think that this idea that we have in our heads of this progression of American success is just not real. And the day that we realize that we literally have to move together is the day that we actually become liberated. Because it's not like, I love the illustration you gave of like of the remembrance of when a pregnant Black woman, when a pregnant enslaved African Black woman was being harmed on a plantation, they dug a hole for her belly as if they were not one.
And as if they cared.
As if they cared. But also as if, like, what is going on psychologically that you think you can separate a child from a mother? What type of objectivity exists in your mind that you think there is a separation of a child from a mother? There is no separation, and there never will be. I live in a different state of my mother. I think about my mother every single day. I'm 43. I think about my mother every single day. There is no separation of mother and child. So any program, any family, any network, any community that is separating mothers from children is not real. And we have to begin to understand that that is a psychological, excuse my language, mind fuck. That is being played upon us.
It is.
And so when we talk about Black motherhood interrupted, we have to understand that that means Black family uninterrupted. You cannot have one without the other. They don't exist.
You cannot. And like when I have those conversations with people, like what I what they bring up and what I make space to acknowledge is that, similar to you, I think about and talk of my mom every day. She just recently started working, so not as much, but we just be on, because that's what she did with her mother, you know, like just multiple generations of you call your mama 5-6 times a day. Like it's just how it's done. And I uplift the fact that that is often reflective of us having a healthy and healthier connection to our mothers, right? And that there are people that do not. And also we can acknowledge that there has been harm perpetuated by individual Black mothers and hold space for that. And also state that the people who have experienced that harm go on to speak about the trauma of having been separated from that mother. So even in those cases, that mother wound and is a source of extreme pain, of identity deconstruction, of loneliness, of all of that stuff. Like my grandmother, for example, the story that I've heard from her is that her mother died giving birth to her. She lived her life without a mother or a father, and that she's in her late 70s, and that is still a painful
Right.
piece of her identity. And so, yes, we can talk about the individual pains and traumas, and we need to, because that's how we heal, right? And and another thing I try to do with Free Black Motherhood is also free from scripts and limitations. Like, let's define this expansively as possible. Talk about all the stories so we can all heal, so we can all know, look, all the matrices of oppression that have affected our lives in all the different ways. And also, we have to be real about what you and I are discussing here, that there is a weaponization of Black maternal identity that the state uses to invalidate, to deconstruct, to stigmatize, to shame who we are as mothers, that has continued since we stopped mothering their kids. We were fine mothers when we was raising their kids. We knew what we was doing. We knew
we was doing. Listen, we had everything all together.
We knew. Look, the diet we were cooking was fine. Everything was fine then. But once we begin raising our own children, there was a consistent and multi-generational effort to say that we were unfit. As I see us doing everything we can, again, albeit imperfectly, because what we don't want is to be categorized as superhuman. That's not what we want. Right. But we do deserve the space to say, considering what we've been given, we've done more than a damn good job.
More than a damn good job. Like, I am a good mother too. I am, as far as I'm concerned, Black women are the best mothers. Because couldn't nobody go through what we've gone through and still produce educated children, still produce joyful children, still produce. Just the fact that we still produce is exceptional. Okay, to end us out, I do want to wrap this conversation with another quote from you. During the month of mothers, I think it's important, like you said, that we unscript what mothering is as a part of this conversation. So I think that there are many women in our community who don't want children, who can't have children biologically, cannot do the physical act, who live adjacent to children, and who are just birthing because they're badass women. And so you had said we're all caregivers, even if we're only taking care of ourselves. And so I love the way you open your videos by always saying hello to mothers and others, with the remembrance that we live in community and we are all needed to birth in community, whether that's children, whether that's ideas, whether that's schoolhouses, whatever it is, we're all needed and necessary. So why is that something you always lead with? What is the value of that when we're talking about uninterruption and mothering in community wherever you are?
So I started leading with "Hey, Black mothers and others," because I wanted to be clear who I was talking to directly, but let other people know that they could sit at our feet and listen and grow and develop. I knew that I was talking to us, Black mothers, and like Black mothers as a whole, but specifically those of us who want to live life as fully as possible. And we refuse to accept a portrayal that motherhood should be inherently wrapped up in sacrifice, abandonment, loneliness, shame, all of these other emotions, right? And so I realized, like, there are fathers, there are aunties, there are non-Black folks, there are, as you said, child-free people who are not interested in having children, but care about community. There are people who would like to have children someday and want to be a witness to the things that we're experiencing. And there are people who would like to have children and cannot, but may want to experience vicarious joy. You know, just so many of us involved in that process. And so it just kind of came up naturally because one of the things that I'm really trying to be clear about is I speak of free Black motherhood um, as the position of the mother, but I'm also a daughter, you know, and
Mm,
my mother was a daughter, and so this is actually free Black motherhood sits situated between a movement for liberated children as well as liberated ancestors, because it's again similar as I said to my kids. My mother is an other. She's a grandmother. That's a lot of rhyming, but she is not left behind in this vision. You know, my aunts are not left behind in this vision because just as I am modeling for the child, they are modeling the stages of life for me. And they may not describe it the same ways as I do. They might have a completely different vision. But what I tell people is, I move within free Black motherhood from the perspective that healing is a multi-generational relay.
that's
And
right.
this is my leg. It's my leg of the race. And my mom and them, they run that leg of the race. And they may not have got me to the finish line, but that wasn't their job. That's not how relays work. And so when I step away from, and again, a lot of us can name specific instances or even people who there was harm involved, right? And how they raised us. And some of those folks are Black mothers. And also, I choose to see it as being a daughter and a mother simultaneously allows me to see, again, coming back to the tattoo, my mama was human. I'm human. My mama was human. The aunt that let me down was human. Like all of these people are just kind of on this journey. And so, like, really quickly, something I've been working on for the, I keep it over here. It looks like I just got a lot of stuff popped up. It's funny. But anywho, something I've been just really leaning into the last couple of months is that I've been wanting to clarify the pillars of what free Black motherhood is.
Mhm.
And so the first pillar is claiming autonomy, moving towards agency. And it says, as a reproductive justice informed framework, FBM sees autonomy, or the self granted permission to choose how we want to live our lives, as the foundation of every liberation movement. However, without agency, which is the ability to act out the lives we want amid personal, familiar, and structural barriers, the benefits of our autonomy is limited. We see the acknowledgement and reclamation of our autonomy as the first steps of many towards organizing our lives on our own terms. I won't read all of these
Mhm.
memories. The next one is we know, we teach, we grow. And it's speaking to the fact that we know, we being Black women, Black mothers, Black feminist thinkers, however someone defines themselves, we have a knowledge that has been passed down through us and continues to be cultivated through generations. And once
Right.
we understand that we know things, we pass that information, and that allows us to grow into who we want to be and name our stories and our experiences for ourselves. The next one
Mhm.
is find myself in us, because I believe wholeheartedly in the tradition of call and response in our families, you know, and letting folks know that we figure out
I love
who we
that.
are together. And that is how we find our identity. The next one is the myth of failure, because I don't believe in failing. I believe in opportunities to grow. I believe in leaning into pleasure and playfulness and
Mhm.
the things that block us from being able to experience those things. And then the last thing is the power of the pause. Understanding that when we have a moment to slow down and resist this rush and urgency around us, we can craft our lives and grow trust. And those are my pillars that I have been working on.
Thank you for sharing that with us, Ambria. I continue to be super inspired by your work. Girl, we have to have more conversations. We have to get you to Pittsburgh for a lecture or something, because I feel like you're just a wealth of knowledge to share with all mothering communities. I mean, just listening to you this last hour has been very affirming for me in terms of the road that I want to take with my parenting, but just with my life as a woman. And as a woman with so much power and so much ability to, reverberate the agency, as you so eloquently spoke about, that I give myself
Mhm.
into the universe for other people. And I'm just immensely grateful that there are minds like yours wrapped in female bodies that are out here, because I'm just thinking like your kids are going to be super dope. Like they're going to be like one of a kind.
They're
And I'm
really
grateful
cool.
for you.
Look, they challenge me and they push the buttons. They
Good.
have an argument for everything. But that's
Mm-hmm.
what happens when you raise free thinkers.
That
It's
is
hard out here in these
what
free thinking
happens.
streets.
This is what happens. They don't listen to you. They be like, well, I'm gonna think about that and I'll get back to you. And it's like, I can't stand you for real, for real. But it's
It's
like
true.
this is what I needed. This is what I desired for my children.
It's
So
it's so true. So a quick story about that, because I know we're wrapping up, is it's not it doesn't feel good when the kids use it with you. But
mhm.
stories like my daughter, where she was in the restroom and an older kid, I think, so my daughter's in first grade, the other child might have been in fifth grade, and she
Mhm.
came out of the restroom stall and she told my daughter, "You didn't flush the toilet." And my daughter was like, "I did flush the toilet. Someone else used. I didn't use that stall. I used a different one." And then she was like, "Well, if you don't, I want to know what your name is, because if you don't flush the toilet, I'm gonna go tell on you." And then my daughter, she tells me the story later, and she said she was like, "I didn't tell her my name because I didn't know what she wanted to do with it, and then I walked out because I didn't have
I
nothing
know
else
that's
to say to
right.
her." And I was like, "Come on!" At the time, I think
Mhm.
6. Come on, 6-year old. You don't owe her nothing,
You
and
don't.
you don't have nothing else to say to her, and she walks
Right.
through life
And
like
you
that.
will not use my identity as an oppression tactic against me.
Correct. And I'm just like, how dare you be this brilliant, this small? And again,
Mhm.
she gives me a run for my money, but there's never a time that I'm not just in awe of the humans that my husband and I have put into the earth. It's amazing.
Well, thank you for your light. Thank you for your wisdom. Thank you for being brave enough to birth children, Black children, at a time like this. Tell folks what you need and tell folks how they can find you.
Hmm. So what I need is more opportunities to run my mouth. So if you see this and you know anyone who's looking for a speaker, a workshop presenter, a facilitator, even just somebody to chat with, like, think of me. I just love these spaces. I just love the again, that call and response, the share of how we build knowledge and community. And
Mhm.
I just love shedding light on the fact that as mothers, we are at the ground floor of humanity and we see it in ways that others don't. If someone is looking to get in contact with me, they can look at my website that I don't like right now, which is Free
I
Black.
love it.
I don't. It needs.
I
We need an
know, but it
overhaul.
just is such a good person. It tells us who you are.
Ah, So look, you can go to freeblackmotherhood.com. You can also find me, Free Black Motherhood, on Instagram. I have a Substack where I'm exploring and describing my self-love journey. The name of it is That Freed Self, in reference to a Toni Morrison quote. Claiming becoming free was one thing, claiming ownership of that freed self was another. And yeah, I just hope to connect with folks. And I'm so grateful to you, Muffy, for this space. And next week, look, next you're gonna have to be on my podcast.
I will. You call me, I'm coming. Yeah, so first of all, thank you so much, Ambreia. I appreciate you immensely. We will continue to have these conversations. Like I said, I'm going to be going live on Wednesdays throughout the month of May, just talking about Black motherhood uninterrupted. I'm excited to welcome next week a woman who I went to school with, who is an other and just has such a joy for children. Her name is Catherine Calhoun. I first I've known her for a long time, but I invited her to come and babysit, which I believe is a divine calling, during one of our Brown Mamas events. And she just, the way she loved on them children, I've never seen anything like it before. So I'm excited to welcome her next Wednesday at 12. Make sure y'all go on over to freeblackmotherhood.com. Is
Yes.
that correct? And check out Ambreia's website. Listen to her on Instagram. Continue to have conversations with your friends, family members, children, partners about what it means to be a free Black mother and about really how you can stop if you are agreeing and standing in agreement with what society expects of us, and start creating principles, ideologies, methodologies within your home that support what you want for yourself first, and how you want to align what your strengths are with your children.
Yep.
So we appreciate y'all immensely for listening, for tuning in. Rewind it back, because if you're just now coming in, you missed quite the conversation. But yeah, we will talk to y'all later. Peace.
Thank you.